Oh, look at that. I'm back. What's up, everybody? What's going on? As always, it's your host, your best friend, your confidant, your number one source, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to a very, very much anticipated episode of the Devil State of Mind podcast right here on the Hockey Podcast Network as well. Sports Wire Radio, the best place to get everything you need to know about this. I really, really hope this season ends sooner than later, New Jersey Devils. But as always, Devils fans, hope you're doing well today. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you're checking out this episode. And thank you guys, as always, for taking time out of your day to check this episode out and all the episodes, even though it's been over a month since the last time you heard and saw me. It was a trade deadline recap, which really wasn't much of a recap because the Devils didn't really do anything. Um, but I'm sure people would like to know, where the hell have I been the last month? Um, Couple things. Number one, I decided to take somewhat of a break, mainly just due to the fact that being overly frustrated with the team and obviously just kind of waiting for the inevitable that the Devils will be eliminated from playoff contention within the next couple of games as they're down to their final 10 games of the regular season, and just feeling like I needed a break, feeling like I needed a break from all the content creation and all the podcasting and everything. Still tried my best to cover as best as I could. Not as consistent as I used to be, but nonetheless, I still appreciate that everybody is just constantly patient with me and also supportive as well. The other thing that if you saw on my personal pages over last Wednesday, I'm officially going to Syracuse University this upcoming July, the first week of July. I'm going to be going for my master's degree in broadcast and digital journalism with a sports track. So next year's Devil State of Mind podcast season, there will be a different background than you're accustomed to seeing here. It'll be a lot different studio, but nonetheless, I'm going to be continuing to do the podcast from there. Not as many in-person game coverage as I normally do because I'll be spending a lot of time up in Western New York. Um, but nonetheless, I'm extremely excited. It's another major step in my career, wanting to work in hockey media and broadcasting. And I've had so much support from so many people. And I can't thank you guys enough for how much you guys care about what goes on with me and goes on with this podcast. And I just want to say thank you guys so very much. And someone that we have on here for this episode is also a major supporter of mine. I'm also a massive supporter of her as well. She came out with a piece involving Jake Allen that has gotten a lot of traction over the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to bring her on. And you guys have met her before. We've done a podcast together back in late December, early January. We were in person in Seattle doing a podcast episode right in front of Climate Pledge Arena, which was so much fun. And she's back for a third time this season. It is with great pleasure that we welcome on Sports Illustrated's own Jennifer Streeter. Jenny, great to see you again. How's everything going, my friend?
Oh my gosh, Neil, it is always so good to be with you, my friend, and also on Devil's State of Mind. You know, I love it here. The vibe is so fun on this podcast, and I feel like I get to be so open and show so much personality. So it's truly just great anytime I get to come on. Things are going well. I was dealing with an engagement this weekend. My best friend proposed to his girlfriend, so been having a really good, fun time this weekend, and I'm excited to get back to work, talk New Jersey Devils, and all things Jake Allen with you.
Fantastic. So let's kind of do a quick update as to where the Devils are at this point. The Devils just finished up their 72nd game of the year. It was yesterday, late afternoon, early evening. It was a 5 o'clock puck drop in the place of horror, as I like to call it for us Devils fans, and that is Raleigh, North Carolina, taking on the Carolina Hurricanes in the final matchup of the season. And as we all know, the Devils got absolutely walked by Carolina. Devils went up 1-0 in the first period thanks to a goal from Timo Meier. But it really felt like it was only a matter of time before the Carolina Hurricanes got going. They would end up scoring 5 unanswered goals. Devils would get one back in the third, but it didn't matter at that point as the Devils went on to lose 5-2. They now finish for the second consecutive year being swept in the season series by the hands of Carolina. They're also 2-18-1 since the beginning of 2021. in the regular season against Carolina. And so, Jenny, my first question to you is this. I want to quickly. Oh, that was on me. 1 second. Sorry about that. I want to quickly bring up to you a quote that Connor Brown said to Amanda Stein yesterday after the game, and it was kind of a in a year where there's been so many damning quotes from this team. I think this is yet another one that kind of stands out. And so, Connor Brown said this from Amanda Stein before the game in the first period. I thought we were managing things really well. There's some things that happened throughout the game, and some emotions got high, and were just handled poorly throughout the game. Hockey's an emotional game. You're playing at such a high speed, it's violent. When you have scars against the team, sometimes it can be that much harder to manage. So it's a big learning moment for this team. To learn, you have to identify what's going wrong. You can't just say, oh, we got to overcome this or we got to beat this team. It's like, well, why? Why is this team having the success that they've had against us? It's certainly not unfixable. It's very fixable. So that's what we got to take out of tonight. And Amanda Stein went on to ask to try to elaborate on what he meant by why. And Connor Brown declined to really get into specifics about that and said,
about the scars.
yeah, about the scars. And he was like, I know what we need to do to figure this out. So what do you take away from that? Because the way I personally take away from that is that there's clearly, again, some things going on in that locker room that are just not right, regardless of what you see on the ice. And when they play Carolina in particular, they just look like a completely different team. They look like they have no business being on the same ice as the Hurricanes. And I think, honestly, in a way, it just kind of proved how far away the Devils are from being a true contender. If they can't have any success against Carolina in their own division, how are they even going to have success against the rest of the league? And this is a team that's not even going to make the playoffs this year. So what are your thoughts from those comments?
Yeah, well, first of all, like I do agree with a good portion of that quote. Like I agree hockey is an emotional game. I think some fans and people who watch the game forget the players on the ice, they're people too. And as human beings, we all have emotions, and when you're an NHL player where hockey is what you do for a living, that's the sport you've grown to like live your life around and that you love, you're going to have emotions, of course, with playing in the NHL. I mean, me in particular, I think the scars is probably in reference to just the rivalry that has kind of formed and how the results of recent games between those two teams have played out. Just because, I think players pay more attention to fan bases than people often think. Like, I think everyone knows that the New Jersey Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes, that those fan bases love to kind of go at it a little bit. And not that I'm saying that gives more fuel to the game, but I mean, just with how results of this series have played out recently, like you kind of mentioned, I think it's only natural for there to be kind of more pressure on this particular matchup and for emotions to kind of be heightened. I don't know if it necessarily means that something's going wrong in the locker room. I mean, I think there's just a lot of frustration surrounding the Devils in general right now, but I think there's probably frustrations in the locker room with how matchups against this particular team have been turning out recently, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a difficult, era for the Devils in terms of playing Carolina. It dates all the way back to the 22-23 second round series where, after the Devils have that, emotional 7-game set beating the Rangers, they go right into the next round against Carolina and they get outclassed. I mean, in 5 games. And from that point on, it's felt like that Tom Fitzgerald, the general manager of this team, try to make this Devils team tougher, more physical, to try to match up better with Carolina. But the fact of the matter is that the Hurricanes play a system that the Devils have never been able to figure out. They've been forced into doing a lot of dump and chase and being forced to essentially try to score via the power play. And that's difficult in itself when the Hurricanes have constantly been a top 3, top 5 penalty kill team in the league the last 4 or 5 years. And you got to give Rob Brindamore a ton of credit. But I've often said this, that Tom, you bring up such a good point about, the players listen more to the fan base and understand it more than we think. I think the same can be said for the front office. And I look at it with Tom Fitzgerald and say, I think he's always been extremely sensitive about what people say about his team, what people have said about, are they physical enough? Are they tough enough? They're too soft because they get hurt all the time. And I think that that's why he overcompensated so much the last couple of years. And just seeing yesterday was just another reality check in the handful of reality checks that this team has gotten this year, that they're not as close as everybody was hoping that they were. And you go back to that 8-1-0 start to the year, and it feels like so long ago that the Devils were as good as they were. But Sheldon Keefe brought it up right then and there that they weren't matured yet. They weren't fully playing to the level that they're capable of. And he was right. And we're now at this point in the year, it being late March, and the Devils once again will not be making the playoffs. And there's a lot of question marks, Jenny, about this team. There's been a lot of talks about what the direction of this team is going to be moving forward. From what I understand, hearing from Emily Kaplan of ESPN, the Devils may move on from Tom Fitzgerald. They may demote him and bring in a president of hockey ops. I don't know. It just feels like that for the first time in years, it kind of feels like the Devils are in a really, questionable spot. There isn't really a defined idea as to where the Devils need to go. So where do you think the Devils need to go when you look at the rest of this year, with there being 10 games left to go, and then obviously heading into the off season? Like, do you agree that changes in the front office and maybe even behind the bench with Sheldon Keefe need to be made? Do you think that there's something else going? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I disagree that there should be any change with Sheldon. I have heard that. Like, I've heard that people think that there should be change there. I personally think where the change needs to happen is with Tom. No disrespect to him, but I think I heard that too from Emily with what she was saying about how there's potentially going to be like, he's just going to be like demoted, and then someone else is going to come in above him. I have heard that sources as well. And I'm personally like, I just don't think with how things transpired at the trade deadline, or lack of transpiring, if you will, at the trade deadline, I just don't know if he needs to be where he is. I don't know if he's at the point where he can make the changes the Devils need for them to see success. I personally think that, obviously, like, any head coach has to take some front of responsibility, of course. But I think when you're dealing with a situation where there's stuff going on in the front office and there's kind of like other stuff going on in the organization above you, like, there's only so much a coach can do. At the end of the day, like, blame needs to be put on the GM and not just the head coach. So I personally, like, I have nothing but respect for Coach Sheldon. I got my start when, like, I was a student sports reporter, and he let student media into his press conferences to, like, ask a question if they want to ask him a question. And, not that that's any indication on, like, how good of a head coach he is,
Right.
but just me personally, like, I just have respect for him, and I would like to see how the opinion of him shifts under a new GM, because that's where you can really see if change needs to be had. Like, if there's a new GM and the same mistakes and the same results are continuing to happen, absolutely. Then it gets to a point where there's nobody else to blame but the head coach. But
Right.
I think I would like to see change at the GM first, rather than with coach.
It's really, first of all, that was fantastic, because I completely agree that I often said when the Devils hired Sheldon Keefe prior to the beginning of last year that the Devils needed to have a coach that would hold guys more accountable. I felt that, obviously what Lindy Ruff is doing in Buffalo now is great. And the Sabres are well on their way to finally breaking that playoff drought and getting back into the playoffs, which would be spectacular. But I often felt like that there wasn't enough of a lack of, I felt like there was a constant lack of accountability. And when Sheldon came, I felt like that he was more of a hard ass. He was more of a guy that wanted guys to play a certain way. And Sheldon Keefe, as you've, experienced yourself, and I've seen many times in interviews, he's not afraid to say what needs to be said publicly, like, not even like, holding back. He has said things like, we have a long way to go before we become a real hockey team. I mean, that's a damning statement in itself. And then even right before the Olympic break, he was saying that the team were not mentally tough enough. I mean, again, like, he's talking about this team. He's talking about the guys that he coaches every day. And honestly, I think that there has been times where he has said without really saying that he's pointing the finger at the man that is the general manager and president of hockey ops in Tom Fitzgerald. Keep in mind, this is now year 6 for Tom Fitzgerald. This is his second coach now that he has hired since being the GM, and he will miss the playoffs again for the 4th time in the 6 years that he has been the GM. If the Devils didn't have the year that they had in the beginning of last season and racked up all those points, the Devils could have missed the playoffs last year as well, and this would be back-to-back years that the Devils don't even get a playoff game at the Rock. So to me, that's a clear indication that the only thing that has not changed, we've had different coaches, different players, everything. The only thing that hasn't changed is the man who is in charge in the front office. And that comes down to the ownership, Joshua Harris and David Blitzer, and their decision as to whether or not they feel that they need to make the change. And I think change is necessary because I don't think you can bring everybody back the way that you bring them back after the season that the Devils have had this year. And with all the contract situations going on, Shimon Nemec, obviously there's been a lot of talks about maybe he gets moved during the offseason, depending on what kind of contract he asks for. And there's so much. I feel like the Devils are going to be one of the most intriguing teams in the offseason, Jenny, just from everything. And even hearing it from other big name reporters out there about how the Devils are a team that a lot of people are keeping an eye on because they don't know where they're going to move, where they're going to go moving forward. So, we'll
One
see.
thing that I also want to add is that I feel like there are certain moves that GMs and coaches can make to create buzz surrounding a team that the Devils just aren't doing. For example, the New York Rangers right now, I know they're the Devils' main, they're big rival for the Devils, obviously, but
Right.
more people are talking about the New York Rangers right now than they are the Devils, even though the Rangers are at the very bottom of the Metro Division as we're recording this with
Sure.
67 points compared to the Devils' 76. And people are talking about the New York Rangers right now because Drew Fortescue of Boston College just saw his rookie lap and got his first NHL point. And I feel like I've told you this literally every single time that I'm on your podcast is I would love to see the Devils create some buzz with young talent. I feel like you and I have talked about this in depth before, but I just feel so strongly that as I've kind of advanced in covering the NHL over the past few years, one thing I've noticed is that the league is starting to trend younger and younger talent pool wise. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, Gabe Perreault, these are all players that I don't even believe can legally have a drink and are making so much noise in the NHL and seeing so
Yeah.
much success. And I know that developing your prospects is key. I know that the experience Ethan Edwards is getting down in Utica. I'm sure that's going to be great and make him
Mm-hmm.
a great talent for the Devils. But I feel like we haven't seen a moment like that for the Devils in so long where we see someone take their rookie lap and getting a point in their debut game. I would love to see something like
Yeah.
that. And those are moves that can only happen because a GM or a head coach allows those prospects to get that opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
and when you're at this point in the season where you're not making the playoffs, you have a certain number of game lefts, what's the harm in calling up a young guy from the AHL and letting him
Mm-hmm.
get in some reps?
I'll be very honest with you. I'll answer that question. I mean, I know it wasn't really a question; it was more of a statement. But the fact of the matter is that the Devils really just don't have a whole lot in Utica to even call up. That's the problem that it comes down to. Tom Fitzgerald's also been really bad at drafting and developing players. Um, People will say, "Well, we drafted Luke Hughes," and it's like, well, Luke Hughes has never played a game in his life in Utica, and he never will. He came up to the league right away. Shimon Nemec, he played a bunch down in Utica and did develop, and now he's a consistent NHL defenseman. But there are some other guys that I can name. Alexander Holtz is a guy that stands out a lot, was a top prospect for this Devils team that never really clicked, and then sat in the press box for 20 plus games in 22-23, not playing for the Devils, not playing for Utica, nothing. And he played so little that his value went all the way down to being traded for Paul Cotter last offseason or the offseason before. And Holtz was just put on waivers by the Vegas Golden Knights. So that kind of tells you right then and there. Akira Schmidt is another example of a guy that just, he had potential in 22-23, and the Devils never really took advantage of that. And they really just, they threw him out there way too much and screwed up his development. And so it really comes down to, and there have been other misses. Chase Stillman being drafted in the first round, just, yeah, that's one that will forever haunt many Devils fans. Chase Stillman doesn't even play in North America anymore. He plays in Europe. So the fact of the matter is that you have a GM that cannot draft, cannot develop, and has made a lot of trades that make no sense. One of the most damning ones that I'll just bring up is Herman Traff. People will say, who the hell is Herman Traff? The Devils drafted him a year and a half ago and then traded him to Anaheim for half a season of Brian Dumoulin. And the Devils didn't even keep Brian Dumoulin. He left in free agency, which honestly was not a good move. And Herman Traff just signed his entry-level deal last week with the Anaheim Ducks and has been tremendous playing overseas. Now, granted, hasn't played North America yet, but I could give you a laundry list, Jenny, of the amount of issues that Tom Fitzgerald has created that have led the Devils to this point. And you bring up such a good point about this league is getting so much younger. The top guys that we talk about, Connor Bedard, who the Devils will play later tonight at the Rock against the Blackhawks at home. Macklin Celebrini. You have Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther. So many guys. And then think about some of the young guys that are coming into the league in the draft. Gavin McKenna, Ivan Stenberg. Like, this league is getting younger, and the Devils have the 22nd best prospect pool in the league.
Yeah, I would love, that's kind of just the gist of what I was trying to get at, is I would love to see the Devils prioritize their prospects more and prioritize like acquiring young talent and like developing young talent. I would love to see that be more of a priority.
I 100% agree, and we'll see. We'll see how things go once we get to the offseason. I will tell this to Devils fans to just wrap up this segment. Tom Fitzgerald is speaking at the end of the season to the media. He's not going anywhere. If they don't have a press conference and he's not there, that's different. So keep an eye on that. That's something to keep in mind moving forward. But now let's shift to why we actually are all here. Because Jenny is very transparent with me. She'll usually give me the heads up, especially if it's something Devils related, and it's great. And I was really excited to hear about this piece coming out. You can also watch a video interview of this, by the way, which is also great. And this revolves around Jake Allen. Now, Jake Allen has probably been the better of the two goaltenders that the Devils have had this year. But it's not what he's done on the ice that's been impactful, more that what he's done off the ice and being so involved in the community and being so involved in charity work. And I wanted to give Jenny the opportunity to speak more in depth about her one-on-one interview with Devils goaltender Jake Allen. And you brought up some numbers that are tremendous. So, Jenny, I want to give you the floor to kind of tell my viewers and listeners more about what you learned about who Jake Allen is, the person off the ice.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for that. That's so sweet. Second of all, yeah, this is a story that I've been reporting out since the first week in February. I knew that I wanted to do a really big feature story, and I knew that I wanted it to be over a New Jersey Devils player, but I simply couldn't decide who I wanted to do a feature over. And, I asked some fans that I keep in touch with, some of the members of the New Jersey Devils fan base, and a lot of them said, Jake Allen is doing really well this year, but nobody is talking about him. Like, I feel like we don't know too much about him. I would love to learn more about Jake Allen. And I said, okay, done deal. And as I was doing my research on him, I saw that, he has his own charity foundation. It's called Program 34. But then I also saw that the NHLPA, the NHLPA, so the Players Association, they have their own charity foundation called Goals and Dreams. And I saw that Jake Allen was one of the top contributors there. And then I looked up where he's from, New Brunswick, and they have a charity foundation, Hockey New Brunswick, that handles donating equipment to youth hockey players in need. And he's one of their top contributors there. And I was like, oh my God. So he is just has a really big philanthropic heart. Like charity work means so much to him. So I just started pursuing the story. I ended up obviously interviewing Jake Allen himself, as you mentioned. We do include a video link to that in the story. But I also interviewed the director of the NHLPA Goals and Dreams program. And then I interviewed the director of Hockey New Brunswick. And they were all just telling me how for Jake, it is just truly so important for him to give back. How this is something that he loves to do. And when I was talking to Jake about it, what's interesting is he was just like, I've reached the pinnacle of my career as a hockey player. Like I am in the NHL. I love what I do. But he remembers that it was such a journey to get here. And he notes that in New Brunswick, it's really rare that they see like a hockey player develop to this high level. And he told me he just remembers every single person along the way who helped him to get to where he is. And he wanted to give back. So yeah, you mentioned the numbers. More numbers are in depth in the piece, but he's donated and raised over $1 million for charity work. And a lot of that is for youth hockey equipment. A lot of that is him providing, whether it's goalie sets of equipment or just regular equipment. He's donated a lot of money and raised a lot of money to help fund grassroots programs and kind of help secure the future of the game, which is so heartwarming. And for me, just when I was doing the research of this piece, not to sound like a bad hockey reporter, I did not realize just how high and expensive like hockey equipment is. Obviously there's a lot of gear in the sport, but when you're an NHL reporter, you're so focused on covering the players, covering the coaches, covering the practices, covering the games, that you don't sit there and think like, hey, by the way, like how much are skates? Like how much are the pads? And when I was doing the research and I saw, on the low end, a set of equipment is $600, and on the high end, it's like up to 3,000, Yep. My mind was blown. I thought that was just so incredibly crazy because, with where the world's at economically right now, there's no way that everyone who wants to play hockey can afford that. It's just not feasible. So seeing that there are players like Jake Allen who are aware of that and just want to, use the money that they've earned in the NHL to kind of give back. I just thought that was so great. But yeah, and then hearing him talking to him one-on-one, he told me over and over again, he's like, for me, giving back is a no-brainer. He said the words no-brainer like so often. So yeah, Jake Allen truly, like, he does not get enough credit on the ice, and I think he does not get more credit off the ice. So hopefully this story is kind of bringing awareness to the NHL world that there are truly some heroes in the league.
When Jenny and I were first talking about setting up this interview and talking about this, it was right before the Devils played Washington last week, and it was a frustrating loss because of the fact that Jake Allen played so well, and the Devils couldn't get him enough goal support to ultimately win. It would have been great, but Jake Allen, he did win a game. He won the game in Dallas last week, which was important, but for everybody that watches the Devils and just knows Jake Allen as the goaltender, he's a very reliable guy. He is a guy that this team can go to when they need it, and he will come up and play at a high level. He'll have a bad game here and there, but that's normal for any goaltender. But he is such a reliable goaltender. So happy the Devils traded for him because it was just such an unknown when the Devils got him. But now that we've learned about him as a player, and now that we know more about him as a human being and a humanitarian, I think that just makes him that much more of a likable guy. And I just want to clarify one thing for my viewers who may be a little confused. Hockey New Brunswick is New Brunswick in Canada. Just keep that in mind. This is not New Brunswick, New Jersey. I just want to clarify that for some, because they may get confused and be like, oh, I've never heard of hockey in New Brunswick. And it's like, there is hockey in New Brunswick, New Jersey, but that's not what we're talking about. Jake Allen is from Canada. He is a good old, as my one friend would say, a good old Canadian boy. But he's just a tremendous human being. I mean, there's nothing more that we can say other than that. And it's wonderful to see him continue to be the kind of person that he is. And I think that it just shows that, like you said, giving back to the community is a no-brainer. And it's a no-brainer for a lot of people. Not everybody does it, but it is such an important thing. And you bring up such a good point about hockey as a whole, especially when it comes to wanting to get into the sport. And this is really focused more for like kids and parents. Hockey is without question one of, if not the most expensive sport in terms of equipment and things like that, and time on ice and everything in North America. And I think that that's one of the bigger reasons why it's hard at times for hockey to grow, because kids just can't simply pick up a stick and gloves and helmet and skates and just go play whenever they want. Unless you live in Canada, that's a different story. In the United States, it's much harder. And I'll tell people really quickly, when I was growing up and I wanted to play hockey and I wanted to be a goalie, it cost my parents thousands of dollars just to give me the opportunity to play. And I didn't make the NHL, as you can clearly tell. Um, so think about that. Think about, for every player that we see playing in the NHL, think about all the players that didn't, that also had to spend thousands of dollars just to try to get the opportunity to live out their dream. For Jake Allen to go out there and give back and give equipment and give these kids an opportunity to play a sport that they love and to grow and to dream big is just tremendous. And I'm so glad, Jenny, that you brought this to light, because it's one of those things that isn't talked about enough. And this is why I love these kind of feature stories, why I love reading what you write. Christy Flannery of the Hockey News, I love her featured stories because it's very similar. And there's so many other stories like that out there, because I think it's so important to learn about the players, not just who they are on the ice, but how they are off the ice, right? And I think that that's why so many people, like, you think about how much like Jack Hughes is involved in hockey in New Jersey and that program and the New Jersey Devils, foundation. And learning about those kind of things is so important, because you really create an even higher level of respect for these people. Because, like you said, at the end of the day, they're just human beings like you and I. And they just have the ability to go out and do these extraordinary things with the money that they make in the sport that they play. And it's just tremendous. The one thing I wanted to ask you, though, is this. What is the number one thing that maybe surprised you the most, or that you didn't realize until you started talking to Jake, that really caught your eye?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'll answer the question about when I was talking to Jake, but one thing that really took me aback was when I was interviewing the director of the NHLPA Goals and Dreams program. And I just straight up asked him, like, I feel like there are lots of players who give back, and I feel like there are lots of players who are involved in NHLPA Goals and Dreams. But would you say it's fair to say that Jake Allen is among the top who contribute the most regularly and who are kind of consistently available to you? And I got him to go on record, and he said yes, that Jake Allen was, out of all of the players in the league who are into charity and who provide funding for the NHLPA Goals and Dreams, that Jake Allen is among like their top players, the top players who give back. He also mentioned a little bit about how Matthew Schaefer, so early on in his career, is also up there. But I did think that was not that I was surprised by that, because I kind of knew that was the answer, and that was why I was asking that question, because I wanted him to be able to tell me yes. But I don't know. I also think, talking to Jake, not that this surprised me, but you can just so tell that he does all this charity work because he loves it, and not just because it's the right thing to do, and not just because it's a good look. Like, he does it because he's so passionate about it, and because he loves that. And one way that I could tell that when I was talking to him was when I was asking about his charity work. Like, he wasn't just talking about his own program 34. He was talking about what he does for Hockey New Brunswick. He was talking about all of the charities that program 34 supports. He was talking about donating to the NHLPA Goals and Dreams, and how he's a dad and he knows that how expensive youth hockey is, and how he wants to kind of help alleviate that burden for some families. So seeing his passion was truly so special. And I think that's something that, like, in the hockey world, I think goaltenders kind of get a bad rap a little bit, in the sense that, sometimes, like, people think they're awkward or like
Nuts
or whatever.
Is a good word.
They're goalie, but like, he was so steady, and he was so like passionate about this, and he just seemed like such a normal guy, but someone who just has a big heart. And it was really truly special to see, like, how much this means to him, for sure.
It's wonderful. It's these kind of stories that really allow someone to kind of take a step back and realize that, again, that these are human beings that we're talking about on a daily basis, and that they go out of their way to help others who are less fortunate and have not as many resources to be able to do the things that they want to do. And for people like Jake Allen, and there's many others out there without question, it's just wonderful. And I'm so glad that you were able to bring to light a lot of this, because it's, again, not talked about enough. And I'm so glad that you did. And I'm so glad that I got the chance to talk to you one-on-one about it, because I think it's just something that needs to be talked about more. So
Before we
yeah,
go, one thing
yeah,
I do want to add is that, I know we talked about it before, but just there are tons of players across the NHL who give back. Like this is not something super, super special. What makes it so special is the fact that he's donated over $1 million. Like he has donated and raised over $1 million. Like that is crazy. Like
yeah,
put it in perspective. Like there are players who just do one-off donations of like 50K or like
right.
15 grand. And that is so meaningful and that is still so helpful. But to have a player in the NHL like Jake Allen, who has made this his side passion and who does this on such a regular basis, that the amount he's raised and has funded has garnered over $1 million. I mean, that makes me like speechless. And part of the reason why I was so passionate about this story is I don't know if all of our listeners know this. I am a washed up SEC sorority girl. I did my undergrad in sports journalism at Texas A&M, and on the side I was a Delta Zeta there. But I had an officer position where I was the head of charity events for that sorority. So for my entire years in the sorority, every single charity event my sorority put on, I planned. And while I was doing that, I did that for 3 of the 4 years I was in the sorority, because when you're a freshman, you can't hold officer positions. And I raised over $200,000 for, it was for underprivileged children who couldn't afford hearing aids. And so this charity work has always been something that has been such a passion of mine, like a personal passion of mine.
Yeah.
And, now that I'm in the professional world and, I'm no longer in a sorority where I have the opportunity to like give back tons and tons, it's so cool to be able to kind of combine my professional life with, a passion of mine. So it was really, truly special to see, to do this. But then what was just even more special was, Andrew, who I interviewed with NHLPA, and Nick, who I interviewed with Hockey New Brunswick, just seeing how their faces lit up every time they talked about Jake and how grateful they are for him. Really, truly heartwarming for sure.
Without question. And it's tremendous. And also, I just want to add one more thing to this, and that is this. If you are not someone who understands like the finances for an NHL player, you might look like, if you're an NBA fan or an NFL fan, you might look at $1 million and say, I mean, is that really much of anything? Because there's NFL players that can donate a lot more, because obviously the salaries are more. I mean, Jenny, you cover the New England Patriots. You understand it completely. $1 million is a lot of money in NHL terms. Just raising that much is tremendous in its own right. And it's something that just goes to show how passionate Jake Allen is in wanting to help others and wanting to support others. And that's so important. And especially with the way that the world is right now, choosing kindness is such an important thing. And Jake Allen is proving that it's so important to do so. And so, Jenny, I just want to say thank you for, first of all, just being flexible, because obviously I know we were supposed to do this earlier in the week, but I got under the weather and things like that. But I'm just glad that we were able to make this work and talk about this at length. And I always love having you on, because you bring such a great insight to everything. And, just hearing this kind of story, it's such a great thing to distract me also from the fact that where the Devils are this season. It's just such a positive thing to talk about in what has been a very frustrating year for the New Jersey Devils, but it's great to see things like this happening off the ice. And so I just want to thank you for your time today. As always, I really do appreciate it.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for having me on. It's always so fun to come on here, just since you and I are friends, because it's like, I'm not just talking to like a normal podcaster. I'm talking to someone like I know and trust, and someone I consider a friend. So it's great. I just appreciate you letting me come on and like spreading the message of who Jake Allen is. I'm sure you'll put the link for the story in the
Yeah.
description box. So if you guys want to read the story, the video with me talking to Jake, where you can hear directly from him on his passion, that'll be in the description box. But just yeah, always appreciative of the
Yeah.
Devils fan base. This is how I got my start covering the NHL, is when I was a student reporter getting my master's in journalism at Columbia. The New Jersey Devils, something that people don't know is their PR department, like their public relations department, their communications department is so supportive of student journalism. Like whenever I
Yeah.
go cover a New Jersey Devils game as a professional, like there are seats in the press box for Columbia journalism students. There are seats in the press box for Seton Hall journalism students. And as I'm a professional NHL reporter now, I'm always going to remember like the NHL team that let me be credentialed as a student reporter and let me have that experience when I was still in school was the New Jersey Devils. So being able to remember that and kind of do a fun story like this for Jake is so meaningful. But yeah, I don't think the Devils get enough credit for what they do off the ice, like whether it's the PR department supporting student journalism or Jake donating $1 million for charity. I think it's so easy in the NHL and in the sports world in general to get caught up in the results, but it's nice when you can kind of go behind the curtain and shed the light on some other things.
Without question. And it's great. And I really want to try to do more of these kind of, stories and interviews, because I think it's great. It's just a nice way to kind of still talking about the team, but talking about it in a different light. And I think that just goes such a long way. And I'm really just glad that you were able to take time today. Before I let you go, because I do this all the time, and you know the drill at this point, because this is your third time this year on this podcast. I still like to let the folks at home kind of get a chance to figure out where they can check out all of your work, your social media links and everything like that. So, as always, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I post pretty much all of my work on my X account, which is at Jenny Streeter 3. And then you can literally just Google like Jennifer Streeter NHL on SI or NHL Sports Illustrated, whatever, and you can see my author page there. So yeah, always so fun. I think hockey, as a hockey reporter, I think the reporters have more of a responsibility in that you're really trying to like grow the game and kind of spread the game more.
Mhm.
Because leagues like the NFL and the NBA, they get so much media coverage and they are talked about so often that as a hockey reporter, I find it's really important to kind of also help continue the upward trajectory the league is currently on and help grow the game. So I definitely take what I do very seriously, and it's always fun when I get new readers and supporters for my journalism and just hockey journalism in general.
And you guys definitely should be following Jenny, because Jenny's a very, very busy reporter. And she's got a couple of really awesome
Oh
events
yeah,
coming
should I
up.
tell should I tell them
Yeah,
about?
go ahead. Absolutely. Please
Yeah,
do.
I'm super excited. So next weekend, I will be in New York City. I'm credentialed for the PWHL Madison Square Garden game, which is sold out. So really excited to be taking in the MSG press box and seeing what a sellout crowd looks like from above. I think that's going to be really cool. But then right after that, it's like I cover that game that weekend, and then I pretty much fly to Las Vegas right away to cover the Frozen Four. I'm going to be covering that with my friend Jade, who's also a really talented Seattle Kraken reporter.
Shout out Jade, by the way.
Yeah, shout out Jade. And her and I are going to be sharing a hotel room on the Strip and covering the entirety of the Frozen Four. So really excited to see how things turn out. Especially, I'm kind of keeping my eyes on Michigan and Wisconsin, and in particular. But was really surprised to see that Penn State got knocked out as early as they did. But I think covering the Frozen Four in Vegas, that's going to be so fun.
Absolutely. I will also be at the Madison Square Garden New York Sirens game next Saturday. Support your local women's hockey team if you haven't already. I've already talked ad nauseum about it. By the way, because I talk about the Sirens on here, if you are not doing anything Wednesday, I'm just talking to everybody listening, the Sirens are back home at the Rock Wednesday night against the Minnesota Frost for a home game. So if you got nothing going on a Wednesday night, get a chance to go watch New York Sirens play. I would say if you can go to the MSG game, but as Jenny reported already, it is sold out. But you could watch all the games for free over on the PWHL website. And I highly recommend you check these games out. They are fun. I am irritated right now with the Sirens because they are on a 5-game losing streak and desperately trying to get into the playoffs for the first time in their existence. and hopefully they can get some wins this week. And check out the Frozen Four on ESPN. It's one of my favorite things to watch every year. I'm sad that Michigan State got knocked out by Wisconsin because my dad went to Michigan State. That was unfortunate. We do not like Wisconsin in this household, but I digress. We hate Michigan even more. So I really just don't wish that Michigan wins the Frozen Four, but we'll see. And also, I just want to clarify something because a lot of people were asking me. TJ Hughes is not related to the Hughes brothers. There is no relation there. He just happens to
There's
have.
also, for our listeners who aren't aware, there is also another Jack Hughes. There is a there is a Jack Hughes for the New Jersey Devils. Of course, who scored the Olympic overtime winner, American hero. Right? There's that Jack Hughes, but then there is another Jack Hughes in hockey who I believe is signed to the Los Angeles Kings.
That's correct. Yes.
So the Hughes name is more common than you think, but the other Jack Hughes does not have any relation to this Jack Hughes.
That is so true. And us Devils fans, we were hoping that the Devils drafted that Jack Hughes. We were really begging for it because we were like, we don't care if he's good or not. We just need it for the funnies. We needed to have a laugh. But yes, Jack Hughes. That Jack Hughes is a member of the Los Angeles Kings who went to Northeastern. It's actually a pretty good player, and we'll see when he gets the opportunity if he does to play in the NHL, which would be great to see, especially if he plays the New Jersey Devils. But Jenny, thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it as always. This episode will be out Monday morning because I got to head up to Brooklyn in a little bit because I got to go cover the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA today. I don't want to, but I have to. It's part of my life. But nonetheless, thank you so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it. And you know that we will have you back on the podcast down the road. But thank you for your time today.
Of course. Thank you guys. And let's go Devils.
Let's go Devils. And thank you to everybody who checked out the episode today. And thank you for all of your support as always and being so patient. Again, I know it's been a long time since I did an episode, but I'm glad that I was able to do this one. This was a very important one to me, and I will try my damnedest to be more consistent moving forward to kind of wrap up the year and then just kind of get into what should be a really, really big and monumental offseason for the New Jersey Devils. But thank you guys so much for checking out today's episode, and we will see you in the next episode. Everyone, continue to be the awesome people that you are. And as I always say, at the end of every episode, you got to put those horns up, baby. And regardless of how good or bad this Devils team is, you still got to say, let's go, Devils.